Okay, continuing with the book of Nehemiah, we're looking at chapter 5. Again, it's a narrative more than anything else. It's not really like the books we've seen before where it's just more dates and it's more, people and just basic rudimentary history touching on things. You get a guy's story, and he tells who he is at the very beginning and how he was feeling and how he was distraught because he came across the information of what was happening down with Ezra and Zerubbabel and Yeshua down in Judah. And it really upset him, and he called out to the Lord for help for this situation, that the Lord was behind it. He was even reminding the Lord, like he loves for them to do, that he said that he would forgive them if they came to him. In chapter 2, we see that he is cupbearer of the king, and even the king notices that he's out of sorts. And once again, he's a servant, he's invisible. And yet the king notices him and even says, well, what can we do? And he stopped to pray to God, and how he wanted to go down and take more resources down to help out with the building of the city of Jerusalem. And Artaxerxes was behind it and sent him with some stuff and gave him some protection, sent him down to the keeper of the house down there, and gave him letters of protection and letters of authority that he took down with him. So he came down to Jerusalem, looked it over at night before he told them what he was there for, just to see if what he was told was so. And the place was in ruins. It was desolation. It was there were breaches all over the place. The walls were torn down. The gates were all open, and it had been burned. They're going to have to be replaced. It was just in a horrible mess. And Ezra and the team down there was really working hard to put it all back together. He meets with the high priest, and they start building it, and they're building it not just one section at a time, but everyone is building. Again, chapter 3 is this person built, and this person built next to them, and this person was again against them. We began at the sheep gate and went all around the city of Jerusalem till we came back to the sheep gate, and each person was building in that certain area and had responsibilities, and they were teams. These were families. Again, we're looking at 50,000 people. This isn't, 4-man work team or a 200-man construction site. You got 40,000 people working here or more, all organized and all building on the city. We see also the enemies around. They do not want this city. This city had been a problem to them all before, and they did not want to have to deal with this city or its God. So they spoke against it. They tried to create fear on the people. In chapter 4, we saw where they even threatened the people that they were going to be assassins. But Nehemiah was stronger and smarter. He put them in groups, and he gave them swords and spears, and he gave them arrows and bows, and he let them protect themselves. Some people were trolling with one hand and had a sword on the other. Many people had swords on their sides. Families were moved inside Jerusalem proper so they could be inside the walls. You get the idea that they were encamped everywhere. But when the breaches were fixed and the enemies had to stay out, everybody moved in, and even families moved to another area. In chapter 5, we see something going on that's wrong. We see that there is usury there. The money changers are there. The Jews are not being obedient because they're charging usury. These people also have to pay taxes to the king. They're not free. They have tribute that they need to do. And they're talking about how these people, they're flesh of our flesh, and yet they're taking, our kids are being sold into slavery. The land that we're getting that's supposed to be from Jehovah, we're having to sell, mortgage, to pay taxes and to pay our dues and our tithes. And we're becoming bondsmen of our own brothers. And Nehemiah was upset by this. He consulted with the nobles, and he really gets some harsh language here. You exact usury, every one of his brother, and he set assembly against them. I can see there should be an exclamation point there. There's a lot of anger and venom here, and he comes against them. He talks about how that we have redeemed the Jews out of the land of bondage, and now you're putting them back under bondage? Are you guys nuts? He really comes at them. It is not good what you do. Ought you not walk in fear of our God because of the reproach of the heathen? It is only God that is protecting them from these heathens, these guys, Sanballat and Tobias and all these Arabians that want to move in. God is protecting them with the walls. God is protecting them with the fear of the Lord. And here they are exacting usury, which is also against the law of Moses. Moses had said that you will not do that to your brother. Now you can get tribute from those that are under you, but to those that you have to leave off this usury. So they do that. And he even says that you need to restore what you've taken. If you've taken any lands or any vineyards or anything that belongs to your brother, you need to restore that and restore the corn and the wine and that you exacted from them. and you restore 1/100th part of the money. It may not sound like much, but you're getting back all your stuff plus, 10 cents on the dollar, or like 1 cent on the dollar. Okay, but you're making some money back, and that might accrue pretty strongly, depends on how much was taken. So we see this as that's what's happening there. Moreover, I was appointed to be governor of the land of Judea. He was appointed to be governor, so now this cupbearer becomes governor. And he goes and makes sure that he's reminding them that he did not take. If you eat from the taxes, which is where governors get their money from, then actually the authorities will just create more taxation on the people. So he's telling people, I'm not eating from the governors, I'm taking care of myself. And he's encouraging these other leaders to take care of themselves. He says, I continued in the work all on this wall, neither bought we any land, or any servants were gathered thither unto the work. Moreover, they were at my table 150 of the Jews and rulers, besides those that first came among us. And it talks about what they prepared all day. Yet all of this required I not the bread of the governor, because the bondage was heavy on the people. Because the taxation was heavy enough, I'm going to take care of all of this expense myself. I'm going to meet this expense, this daily expense of me taking care of hundreds of men to get off of the backs of the people. Think upon me, God, for good, according to all I've done for this people. Now, this verse 19 is the one also at the very end of this book. Nehemiah is also wanting to remind God that what he's doing for the people, think good upon me. And it's okay for us to do that, even though we have the righteousness of Christ, to know that that is important, that we remind God also that we're proud of what we've done for him. We see that the enemies came up, Sanballat, Tobias, and the enemies come up, and they're upset because there's no breach. They cannot get in. Here, they have to go through the gates. The walls have come up and covered all the breaches. There's no way to just walk in. There's no way for assassins to get in. There are people on the walls. There are people monitoring the stations. There's people at the gates, and they're very upset about this. They don't have the freedom to this area and the freedom to bother the people like they did before. And they're saying that the Jews are here to do mischief, and they sent messengers, and they even called out to Nehemiah, and Nehemiah wouldn't come. Nehemiah said, I'm busy. They called out again, but he knew they were playing him. He knew they were trying to draw him out of the holy city, draw him away out of the walls, and then he would be defenseless. He didn't fall for that. There was even a quote-unquote a prophet who was trying to get Nehemiah to fear, just to plant the seed of fear. He told him that God had told him, or it would be wise and advisable to go hide yourself in the temple area. That way you're protected. But Nehemiah was busy. He was busy building the wall. He was busy building the city. And it talks about, it's reported that he would go down. It said this fellow, Shemaiah, he came and told him that he needed to go to the house of God in the temple and shut himself up, for they come to slay thee. And he's telling Nehemiah and all these nobles, you need to go hide in the temple area. Well, I mean, that's like putting a bullseye on your back. You're all in one area. All they got to do is find you. Plus, to plant those seeds of fear. That's what this fellow was. It says that afterward I came into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaliah, the son of Methalabel, who was shut up, and he said, let us meet thither in the house of the Lord, whether the temple, and let us shut the doors of the temple, that they won't slay us. So this guy is trying to create fear with Nehemiah and fear with the nobles. And Nehemiah said, such a man as I flee, and who is there, being as I am, that would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in, for I perceive that God did not send him, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me. He found out that this was a conspiracy from Tobias and Sanballat. They had hired him, and he found out later that this guy was hired, and he was so hired to make him afraid that he would go and sin and go into the temple area. And so he would not do that. He goes, my God, think upon Tobias and Sanballat according to their works. And there was also a prophetess that was sent to try to create fear in him, but he wouldn't buy into the fear. He kept his mind focused. He kept his hands busy. He kept focused on what he was going to do. When he stopped to think about himself, then he might start fearing, but he's concentrating on what God has got to do. And it talks that they finished in the 25th day of the month of Elul. It took them 52 days to finish the wall. So now they still got to work on Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a big city, and these people are spread out all over the place, and some of them are unprotected. So he asked that everybody kind of stay closer together until their numbers get bigger. And moreover, in the days of the noble of Judah, he sends this out, and so that he talks to these people about the fact that this work was wrought of God. He wanted to make sure that God got glory. When you see chapter 7, he talks about that the wall was built, and there were Levites and there were singers, and his brother came along. He was a faithful man, and he also made sure that the gates stayed closed. They stayed closed on Sabbath, so that way people could not trade with the Jews and break the law, the Sabbath law, which later on Nehemiah has a problem, because that's exactly what these Jews are doing. But here he sets it up. He says, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they stand by, let them shut the doors and bar them, and appoint the watches for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, every one in his watch, and every one over his own house. He tells everyone to get close and watch over your houses, watch over each other's houses. We're going to open the doors up. Well, this really doesn't lean into Sabbath. The other one does, but this is about safety. So let me back up a little. He doesn't mention Sabbath here. I'm thinking of another story that comes up later, but he's thinking of safety. So there will be only a certain time when these gates are open, and they will be monitored, and then they will be barred, and you must keep all your people close. He still knows they're in danger. This isn't a peaceful building. They're still surrounded by enemies that wants to destroy them, enemies that want to run in on a breach. And when they close them, and they're going to bar them, for the city is large and great, but the people are few. And God put in my heart to gather together the nobles, and the rulers, and the people, and reckon their genealogies. Now, in 7, we see a genealogy. And again, this is a testament of the men who went there with Ezra. In fact, you will notice that from here on down to the end, you will find that this is exactly like Ezra 2. So this is a copy of Ezra 2 inside of Nehemiah, and again is a reckoning, a clear reckoning of the people who got there and their genealogies, what the connections are. And we've talked about genealogies several times, about how it's important to reckon your genealogy. It's important that these people are recognized for their sacrifice, for their strength, and also the legality for their descendants. So read through this list. I checked it over. It is exactly like Ezra 2. Even when you go down into the verses 60s and 70s, where it talks about the men servants and the maid servants and the horses and the mules and the camels and the chiefs of their fathers and those that gave gold and silver and all these different things, and the priests and the Levites and the singers. So again, God is making clear the historical text here, the narrative, that these people did what they did so that no one could say, hey, you guys don't belong in the land. Well, here's 2 historical reckonings. And even though we don't know for sure if Ezra knew that Nehemiah was writing this record, or did Nehemiah go ahead and he felt led of the Lord to go ahead and add Ezra 2 into Nehemiah. But the point is, what does it say? Out of the mouth of 2 witnesses. So here's 2 witnesses for the verification of the city of Jerusalem in Israel. So it's very important here for the establishment of the city. 2 or more witnesses. There's 2 historical witnesses right there saying the exact same things. So we see a lot of strength here, and even though 7 is a copy, read through it, understand why it's there, and see that God is protecting Israel. God is protecting and establishing Jerusalem. And this only goes up from here. Like I said, once God establishes this, it stays quiet for hundreds of years, and then Jesus shows up. So like I said, we'll finish off with Nehemiah. History from the Bible stops there. If you want more history, you can read Josephus. He has the other 400 years. And again, like I said, I kind of read through it. It's this person fought with this person, and this person fought with this person. But this is what God wants us to know, because this is his word. We'll go back and talk to Esther, and then hit some poetry books, and then move into some prophets. But this is very good, and it's very strong about the reestablishment of Israel. It's really cool stuff. Thanks.